Will Kamala Harris regret picking Tom Walz over Josh Shapiro? Vice President Kamala Harris chose Minnesota Governor Tim Walz as her running mate Tuesday. Walz's selection came as something of a surprise. For much of last week, betting markets have given Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro more than 60% chance of joining the Democratic ticket. In opting for Walz instead, Harris defied the conventional wisdom among Democratic consultants who had broadly favored Shapiro, and on Tuesday morning, some close to the Trump campaign told CNN they were breathing a sigh of relief that the Democratic nominee had not tapped the popular Pennsylvania governor. The wisdom of choosing Walz over Shapiro is therefore bound to be widely debated, and each side in that argument has reasonable points. And here is a rundown of the case for and against believing that Harris's first major decision as leader of her party was a mistake. Why pick Shapiro? Picking Shapiro might have increased Harris's odds of victory. The case for picking Shapiro over Walz is twofold. Pennsylvania is this election's most important swing state, and Shapiro is popular there unless Harris loses in a national landslide. Meanwhile, Minnesota will be a safe blue state. Harris's greatest liability with swing voters may be her reputation as a left-wing San Franciscan. Shapiro arguably could have done more than Walz to mitigate that liability. One, the road to the White House runs through Pennsylvania. Right now, Harris is polling a bit worse in Pennsylvania than in the other key Rust Belt battlegrounds. The likely Democratic nominee trails former President Donald Trump by 1.2 points there, while tying Trump in Wisconsin and leading him by 2 points in Michigan, according to Real Clear Politics polling averages. Close the gap in Pennsylvania, and Harris will be in striking distance of sweeping the three Midwestern swing states, which could be sufficient to win her the White House. Further, Pennsylvania holds 4 more electoral college votes than Michigan and 9 more than Wisconsin. As long as Democrats win Pennsylvania, they could lose both of those states and still remain some other plausible routes to victory. With Pennsylvania in her corner, Harris could lose Nevada, Michigan, and Wisconsin and still get just over 270 electoral college votes by taking Georgia and Arizona. Shapiro could possibly have helped Harris pull past Trump in Pennsylvania. In some recent polls, the governor's approval in the state sits at 60%. Last month, a public policy polling survey found Trump leading Harris in Pennsylvania by 2 points. But when the same respondents were presented with a choice between Harris-Shapiro ticket and one featuring Trump and Ohio Senator J.D. Vance, the former led by 1 point. Number 2, Shapiro could have countered the perception that Harris is dangerously liberal. Although winning Pennsylvania is important, it's obviously not sufficient, but there is some reason to think that Shapiro could have helped Harris in other pivotal states. Harris's greatest political liability may be the widespread perception that she is very left-wing. The Democratic nominee hails from one of the most liberal parts of one of America's most liberal states, and during her time in the Senate, she racked up one of Congress's most progressive voting records. And in her ill-fated primary campaign in 2020, Harris embraced several very left-wing policies, such as the decriminalization of border crossing, a fracking ban, and Medicare for all. Republicans are already trying to use these positions against her in attack ads. Harris has tried to neutralize this vulnerability by disavowing her past positions, championing bipartisan border security legislation, and spotlighting her career as moderate, smart, on-crime prosecutor. Shapiro's selection could have aided this rebranding effort. The Pennsylvania governor has a well-earned reputation for moderation. Since Republicans control Pennsylvania's Senate, Shapiro has only ever enacted bipartisan legislation. He is therefore associated with various anodyne, broadly appealing initiatives such as establishing universal free public school breakfasts, removing college degree requirements for many public sector jobs, and spearheading the rapid reconstruction of a collapsing stretch of the I-95 in Pennsylvania. As New York Magazine's John Chait notes, Shapiro has also proven himself a deft communicator to those on the right side of the aisle. After a would-be assassin wounded Trump and killed one of his most prominent local supporters at a rally in Butler, Pennsylvania, Shapiro delivered a stirring eulogy for the deceased, a firefighter named Corey Caparator, his tribute to the civic pride and familial devotion of the political adversary had wide resonance and may be partly responsible for his strong approval in recent polls. Shapiro's credibility with voters who dislike Trump but distrust progressives is arguably enhanced by his high-profile criticisms of pro-Palestinian campus occupations and the Democratic left's consequent opposition to his candidacy for vice president. To be sure, Walz is scarcely an inveterate progressive. For more than a decade, he represented a Republican-leaning rural House district and assembled the voting record to prove it. During his last session in Congress, Walz voted in line with the preferences of the conservative group Heritage Action 15% of the time, which was more than twice as often as the average House Democrat. Nevertheless, as governor of Minnesota in 2023, Walz assembled an impressively vast and progressive governing agenda, despite the fact that his party held the state Senate by a single seat, which it had won by just 321 votes. They nevertheless managed to enshrine abortion rights, establish paid family and medical leave, restore the voting rights for ex-felons, invest $1 billion into affordable housing, impose background checks on private gun transfers, legalize recreational marijuana, create a refugee program for trans people, deny gender affirmation care in those states, mandate that utilizes the carbon-free by 2040 prohibition, prohibit non-compete clauses in labor contracts, empanel a statewide board to set minimum labor standards for nursing home workers, direct $2.58 billion into improved infrastructure, and increase taxes on corporations and high earners, among myriad of other reforms. Minnesota's frenzy of progressive legislation caught the attention of progressives nationally, and when Harris named both Walz and Shapiro to her shortlist, left-wing groups and commentators began agitating for the former's selection against the latter. For these reasons, Walz's selection may abet a Republican narrative that Harris is a dangerously liberal figure in respect to the left, while Shapiro might have theoretically undercut that impression. Why Walz might have been the right choice, but none of that necessarily means that choosing Walz was a mistake. There are at least 5 arguments for favoring him over Shapiro. Walz balances the Democratic ticket in some ways that Shapiro would not have. The Minnesota government has excelled in recent television appearances, coining a line of attack against the Republican ticket that subsequently went viral. In recent days, news reports surfaced a couple potentially damaging stories about Shapiro. Shapiro's capacity to help Harris in Pennsylvania might be overstated. Shapiro's selection would have made been more divisive within Democratic coalition and could have jeopardized the spirit of enthusiasm and unity that has prevailed within the party since Biden stepped aside. Walz has excelled on television. Walz balances the ticket demographically. Walz is implicated in fewer potential scandals. Shapiro's capacity to deliver Pennsylvania may have been overstated. Shapiro's pick could have undermined Democratic unity and enthusiasm, at least online. So happily these days, the bar for running mates is not high. And this is from Vox. This is on DNYUZ. Please leave your comments. Thank you for your support. Finally, support my Patreon account. The daily posts are 5 videos daily, and they are totally different from what I have on my YouTube channel. Thank you so much for your support and that you find all my content so interesting. You'll find the Patreon account details in the description box below.